Hello everyone. Continuing on our realization that what we have learned so far isn't a description of the real world, as in what we learned is an abstract, ideal model of the world. And we're realizing that the way we handle this in economics is we keep adjusting our approach to decide, okay, that didn't work, that didn't work. So we did monopolies. We are now in externalities and public goods. Future videos will do public goods. Let's stick with externalities for now. So what are externalities? Externalities are the cost or the benefits that aren't captured by the market price. So you can have negative externalities and positive externalities. Negative ones are things you're more aware of, maybe something like the environment. You use fossil fuels. You've got industries that use fossil fuels. Negative externality, climate change. That issue is not captured in the price of the good. So somebody, namely rest of us, that's why externality, external, is paying the price. We pay the price with asthma, we pay the price with climate change, we pay the price with long-term impacts on our growth. Negative externality. We also have positive externalities. Let me give you an example. I've done this, I decide to plant a garden, and this garden is kind of interesting. I actually took some time figuring it out, and this garden has two properties. People who walk by really love the flowers. So somebody, not me, gets a benefit from it. But even more than that, I did some research and planted flowers that are good for bees and pollinators. So my garden doesn't just benefit me, makes me happy, I've got all these flowers. It also benefits my community because now I am supporting the bees and the pollinators, which will make the overall ecosystem more functional and will benefit neighbors, none of whom are paying for this, right? So the basic concept of an externality, whether positive or negative, is that people other than the producer or consumer, the person getting the profit or the utility, either pays the cost, negative, or gets a benefit, positive. So now here's an interesting question. If you've got externalities, how do you integrate it into your market system? Because the market assumes it's efficient because the price that is paid by consumers and the profit made by producers reflects a complete accounting of all benefits and costs. But what if there are benefits and costs that are external to the market? For us to address that, it actually turns out not to be technically difficult. It turns out to be politically difficult. But technically, we know how to do this. So all we have to do is to make assessment, whether we want to do this on the consumption side or the production side, demand or supply, and what adjustment we do. So we already know how to do this. We've got our supply and demand curves. What we have to decide is which side do we think we will target and which side do we think we will adjust to make this happen. And it's very simple. Let's take a negative externality, one that we are currently facing with the ecological crisis, and place it on the supply side. That it is in fact, going back very early in our class to the Nigeria example of the Niger Delta, where in our PPF, Nigeria went with oil and there was all these negative externalities. We think it's the producers who we have to target. In that case, this supply curves reflects what's shown by market prices. Based on demand for oil. But we can decide that actually there is an uncaptured cost, an externality. And we believe that this supply curve does not reflect the full true cost. So there is a divergence between the private and the social cost. So all we do is we add the social cost. So what we're doing is we're saying, if we actually forced, maybe by using a tax or something else, this come to pay the full cost of what it means to produce this, then the social cost would be up there. We could do it on the demand side. We could decide that instead of targeting the companies, we target consumers. For example, we have something called a carbon tax. This targets consumers, and there is a debate about which consumers are we targeting. Is it going after low-income people who cannot afford to pay this tax, but they need their cars to drive, whatever. But the purpose of this tax is to target your decision-making about a negative externality. This is on the demand side. So instead of charging the producers, I can raise a tax on the consumers. And here is what you want to remember, flipped axis, which means from the consumer's perspective, demand is going down. That you are charging them a tax. So if they decide that they would buy so much for $5 and there's a 50-cent tax, the market price is actually for 50, tack in the 50-cent tax, and that would be the demand curve. So when you are looking at a negative externality, on the supply side, supply shifts in, up, but always remember in. Conversely, on the demand side, demand should be shifted down or in, indicating that if I fully absorbed that externality into pricing, this is what would happen. Now, politically, of course, the question is who should absorb the tax? Because shifting supply has one kind of result, shifting demand has another kind of result. And who you tax has equity implications for who pays the price. So there are a whole bunch of questions politically that lie behind the decision, should it be demand, should it be supply. But basic principle, if there is a negative externality, start by deciding whose side you want to place the externality and who you want to pay for that supply or demand. And if it's an externality, if it's a cost externality, supply will shift in if you go after supply and producers. Conversely, if you decide to tax consumers, demand will shift in because you are deciding to apply that cost on the demand side.